Please be seated. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. So because everyone is so familiar with the Hollywood versions of our story, we have all committed to memory that very famous line, "Let my people go. Shlach ami." But the truth is that the actual line from the Torah, which we read countless times when Moses approaches Pharaoh, and before each plague is delivered, is Shlach et ami v'ya'avduni. Let my people go so that they may worship me. That is the actual sentence. So what actually happened according to the Torah was that Moses asked permission from Pharaoh for the Israelites to go out into the desert, take some animals, sacrifice them to God. And Moses even tells Pharaoh that they'll only be gone for 3 days. Pharaoh considers it, but ultimately refuses the request. But right before the 8th plague, the plague of locusts, Pharaoh's advisors are ready to give in. They've had enough. They advise Pharaoh to let the Israelite men go to worship their God. That's all they want to do, is worship their God, they say to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh considers this request and confirms with Moses who's going, assuming that only the men are going. But Moses tells Pharaoh, not just the men are going, but everyone is going. We will all go, he says. The young and the old, our sons, our daughters, our flocks, our herds, will all go. In Hebrew, B'na'areinu vizknuneinu nelech. Pharaoh, when he heard that, he said, no way, you're not going. Dismisses Moses, and God again hardens Pharaoh's heart, and more plagues follow. So what I want to do for the next few minutes is I want to take a closer look at that line. What Moses means by saying, "B'na'areinu uvizknuneinu nelech." With our young and with our old we will go. Why did he choose those particular words? And the answer, I believe, is that Moses insisted that everyone be included in the miracle of the Yetziah, of the Exodus. He wasn't satisfied if only the men left. Moses understood and taught us the importance of everyone, each individual, to the whole Israelite people. He saw the importance of the children and made sure to include them, B'na'areinu, our children. He saw the importance of the senior citizens, Vizknuneinu, and made sure that they were included. He even saw the importance of the animals and made sure to include them. Pharaoh, by contrast, only saw one thing. He only saw the importance of himself. He was not the least bit concerned with his people, and he ignored his advisors. He was more concerned with saving face, and ultimately we all know what that did. This phrase, "B'na'areinu uvizknuneinu nelech," with our young and with our old we will go, with our sons, with our daughters, although a line of dialogue that's left out of all the movie versions, speaks volumes about the character of Moses and of the Jewish people, both then and now. It speaks to our DNA. So let me share with you a number of ways that this line truly speaks to us. I'm going to start with this. The line speaks to us today in terms of why we care so much about the hostages in Gaza. Why we constantly pray why we advocate for their release, why we are prepared to give thousands to get one back. B'na'areinu uvizknunenu nelech. How the military and the diplomatic decisions are made with their release in mind, and how we will not rest until they are all safely returned home. Another example, maybe you'll recall the movie Defiance. And if you haven't seen it, watch it. It came out about 15 years ago. The storyline is based on a true story. It's a group of partisans that were hiding out and fighting the Nazis during World War II. The heroes of the film are two brothers, the Bielski brothers, whose parents were murdered by local Nazi sympathizers. They originally ran into the forest to escape and to hide. But in the process of escaping and fighting, they encountered many other fellow Jews of all ages, sexes, backgrounds, skills, and abilities. Young, old, male, female, healthy, sick, skilled, unskilled, observant, unobservant. Didn't matter. They were all taken in and rescued by the Bielskis. And according to the film, approximately 1,200 Jews were saved by them. Why were these Jews saved? They were saved because the Bielski brothers realized what Moses realized. If we are to leave, then we must all leave. No matter how difficult the journey will be, no matter the disputes and the fights along the way, no matter the provisions are scarce, the winter's cold, the illness and death will certainly follow our fellow Jews. No one must ever be left behind, regardless of the price. B'na'areinu uvizknunenu nelech. That is the true message of defiance. Not so much the armed resistance, but the length that the Bielski brothers went to save Jewish lives. Every Jewish life. Every one that they could. Friend or stranger, young or old, it didn't matter, and it shouldn't matter. And that's why we too should live by these words. That is why we too must remind ourselves that each and every Jew is important. That each and every Jewish life is worth saving. And that no Jew must ever be left behind. And here's something else we might want to consider. When Moses uttered the line, "B'na'areinu uvizknunenu nelech," why did he start with the young people first? Wouldn't it have made sense to start with the elders and then go down to the young people? As the rabbinic commentators tell us, without the children, without the young, there is no hope for the future. Traditionally, this line demonstrates the importance of educating our children to serve God, to perform mitzvot, and to know our tradition and history. Unfortunately, today, it's those very same young people whom Moses spoke of first, who don't seem to understand that we are all in this together. As we've seen in the media, and as we've heard from many people over the past 15 months, it is that the younger generation supports the innocent Palestinians. They criticize Israel's actions. They question why we even need Israel. They buy into the false narrative that they've been exposed to for years. They don't know our history. And we ask, what can we do as we can't understand how this is happening? And the answer is we must not lose hope and continue to fulfill Moses' instruction to us that we must bring our children into the fold and impress upon them the need to always be proud Jews and proud Zionists. And that is why I want to conclude this morning with these two stories of hope. Stories from young people, which serve to embolden us in our steadfast support for Israel and the Jewish people, and in our eternal mission to live by the words of Moses. The first is from a college student who has truly internalized the feelings that many of us, and which many of her peers seem to ignore. And she writes as follows: "As a proud Jewish Israeli American, I fear for my safety. As I cry tears in the bathroom between my classes mourning my loved ones, I fear that I might be the next. In college, we are taught that we can be as we are. But as I hear my peers protest and wish death upon my family and friends, I question the validity of freedom. Are you really free in a constant state of worry? Are you really free when the word Zionist, which you proudly call yourself, is used as an attempt to insult you? Are you really free when your whole world is coming down around you and you have to defend your very right to exist? In a time where we should be mourning and paying our respects, those are our issues. Our pain marginalized to mere politics. Am I, a student, really free? And if I can't really be all free, how much of me is really free? And the answer is that young people need to be shown what it means to be a Jew. They have to be exposed to our history. They have to be exposed to our traditions. And then they have to be included in the community and not left behind or ignored. I want to conclude with this little story. I've told it to you before. It's from the actor Hal Linden. Anybody remember Hal Linden, the actor? What was he famous for? Barney Miller. There you go. Barney Miller. Absolutely. Hal Linden's wife wasn't Jewish. And in his words, his children were raised secular. But because of his commitment to the state of Israel, one year he decided to take his entire family on a trip to Israel. And they had a bus with a guide who would take them all over the country. At Yad Vashem, Lyndon's 10-year-old grandson was pushing his grandmother in the wheelchair. And they came to one section which described who the Nazis considered to be a Jew. Aside from having one grandparent who was Jewish, it's also said that if you had brown eyes, you would have to prove that you weren't Jewish. Hal Linden's grandson had brown eyes. And his grandfather, of course, was Jewish. The 10-year-old turned to his grandmother and asked, "Would they have taken me too?" And she answered, "Yes, they would have taken you too." Upon returning back to the United States, the 10-year-old secular boy announced that he wanted to have a bar mitzvah. That he wanted to say to the world that he was a Jew. He wanted to continue his ancestral legacy. After all, if the Nazis were prepared to kill him, that was proof enough to him that he was a Jew. And this is precisely why we must continue to remember Moses' admonition to Pharaoh, which still resonates today. B'na'areinu uvizknunenu nelech. We can only move forward as a people with both our old, for what they have taught us, and with our young, for how they will inspire us. B'na'areinu uvizknunenu nelech might not make for a very great dialogue, like "let my people go." But it goes a long way in teaching us once again that Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh, that all Jews are responsible for one another. It doesn't matter whether you're a Moses, leading 1 million people out of slavery, or a Tuvia, a modern-day Moses, leading 1,200 people out of the hands of the Nazis, or whether you're doing anything else on a much smaller scale. We must never forget that whatever we do it together as Jews. That every Jewish life is important, and that no Jew must ever be left behind, regardless of how many Palestinians Yimach Shemam it takes to get our people back. Forget the numbers, just get them back. B'na'areinu uvizknunenu nelech. We're all in this together. If one Jew is endangered, we all are. Because it can happen to any of us, anywhere, at any time. Because as you know, it's not only about hostages or a war. It's about the assault on Jews and the Jewish people everywhere, especially those who publicly side with Israel. And may we be privileged to keep this commitment for many, many years to come. Shabbat Shalom.